wide receiver moves, starting with a massive deal. Calvin Ridley landing with the Titans, getting $50 million guaranteed, 92 over 4 seasons. Really, really solid deal for Ridley. Just probably not the spot we all want to see him land here, though, but there might be some stuff to be intrigued by. What's your gut reaction to Ridley landing with the Titans?
I'm more confused than anything. I mean, first, this was not the spot that he was pegged to be going, so that first and foremost confused seeing the Titans pop up as the team. But it's just that I know this was with a different team, but Hopkins and Ridley were used so similarly last year. I'm confused as to how they're going to try to intertwine these two talents. Both of them were outside guys last year, but I think this a change of scenery is going to be good for Ridley. I don't think the Jaguars were really using him properly last year. He was running a lot of you can go look at those ESPN Next Gen route trees. He was running a lot of routes to the boundaries. He was playing exclusively outside. He wasn't really being used creatively at all by the Jaguars, in my opinion. So he obviously will be having to compete with DeAndre Hopkins for targets. And I like Will Levis. You mentioned earlier highest percentage of turnover-worthy throws, but the highest percentage of hero-worthy throws as well. So they're going to get the ball downfield to these guys, but it's just really hard to tell given their similar history of usage who's going to be used in what capacity.
I think you brought up some really good points, though, with the usage, and that's actually what Ridley himself cited when they asked him, why'd you pick the Titans? He did mention money, the gambling man. It's not shocking there. But he did also say, I want to be the guy. I want to be used as the guy, and they didn't use me there that way in Jacksonville. He's already been talking about Callahan telling him slot roles and moving him all over the formation to get this more creative type of layup targets, in addition to a lot of the deep, tough boundary catches that we saw him making routinely last year. So really, really intrigued to see in this new role. And Callahan himself talked a lot about, before even getting Ridley, while he was at the combine, we need to add speed. We need to add playmakers. We need to pick the pace up on this offense. I expect a much faster paced, higher throwing. Vrabel was always bottom 4 every single year of his career in pass attempts, passing yards, just abysmal for passing offenses. And Callahan, we've seen how those offenses operate from Cincy, where he is coming over from. So I do think this is going to be great for an overall offensive environment if Will Levis can deliver the rock. We've seen some crazy, beautiful throws from him before, in addition to some Jameis Winston-style questionable decisions. I think it's a great move for him, though. I've always been drafted. I talked about Levis. If you can go back and watch any of our drafts, I continue to talk about him as one of my favorite personal quarterback going in the top 20 guys, or outside the top 20, rather, in those last few rounds. His price has come up about a round since this happened, understandably so, but I still think he's an absolute steal. The kid has a cannon, and I think adding a weapon like Ridley doesn't preclude them from also adding and dipping into this very, very talented rookie class as well. So I could see a much different, more high-flying offense. So, yeah, for Ridley himself, maybe not the best landing spot, but it does just suggest what type of offense we should be picturing over here with the Titans. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily a huge downslide there for Ridley. He just has always kind of gotten drafted higher than where I typically take him. One guy I'm definitely going to be in on, though, is Marquise Brown, landing with the Chiefs, 99th percentile with his 4.31 40-yard dash. And we've seen this guy shoulder wide receiver 1 burdens 4 times. And I don't think he's going to have to do that with Kansas City, landing with the Chiefs. Obviously, it's Mahomes is the selling point here, but I do think he can, when they need to use him as that number 1 guy. You know, when you look at 2021, his sophomore year, he was the wide receiver 6 in weeks 1 to 9 before Lamar got hurt, and then it all kind of went downhill. We've also seen him have these spurts before he himself gets hurt, but without Hopkins with Arizona just 2 seasons ago, Brown was the wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game, wide receiver 5 in targets per game. He was killing it. And so now he lands in a spot that doesn't necessarily need him to be that target hog, but there's going to be plenty of vacated volume. There's really no one else here besides Rice and Travis Kelce. So I could see 8 to 10 targets weekly for a team that has desperately needed speed. Yeah, they've had MVS, but he doesn't bring any actual threat beyond just running wind sprints down the field because he can't really catch it with reliability. Brown can run a much more diverse route tree than just the go as well. So he can fill that MVS type of situation while also doing a whole lot more at every other layer of the field too. Mahomes himself has already said he brings a ton of dynamic playmaking ability. To add a guy like that who's ready to come and work and be hungry, they've already been talking every day about getting the throwing sessions ready. They're trying to keep this thing rolling. Andy Reid was texting about getting a ring, and Brown was like, hell yeah, let's go. Like, it's good. Everything about this is there's so many close landing spots across so many other positions. this seems like they just perfect. Whoever was going to come and be that speedster for the Chiefs was going to be entering a very valuable role. So I love this. His price has gone from 120 to 90 in the span of a week, and I'm still on board with him in that 90-ish range. I think by the time the season's rolling around, I wouldn't be shocked to see him going in the 70s. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of this, but we've also seen injuries and inconsistencies from him in his career. So am I going a little nuts and overboard on Marquise Brown, or do you like the signing a lot too?
I don't want to say you're going too crazy, but it's hard not to get excited about a wide receiver signing on to play with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, everyone's going to get excited about it. It's just kind of a given. But like we said, he's coming off his worst statistical season last year, and I know he's had some success in the league, but it's always like every time people talk about Marquise Brown like producing in fantasy, it's only for stretches. It's never across a full season. He's never finished higher than the wide receiver 21 in fantasy points per game across a full season, and it's all just these little chunks of games where he produces, and a lot of that can be attributed to quarterback injuries or his own health. But I'm trying to tamper my expectations, but I agree. Mahomes was, I'm sure, not thrilled to be running that dink and dunk offense last year. They didn't have a true threat downfield. So this will open up the field for Mahomes, and I'm sure he's happy to have him. But I'm trying not to get too ahead of myself. But obviously the deep A-dot guy for Mahomes and the elite speed is something to be very excited about. No one is Tyreek Hill, but they're obviously trying to recreate him somehow, and they're doing it this year with Marquise Brown. We'll see how it works out, but I think still, around pick 90, pick 100, I think he's still a great pick, but I agree. I think he's going to get pumped up. We saw it happen with Kadarius Toney last year. Just whoever people assume the wide receiver one is in Kansas City is going to get pumped up. And this year, I think they're going to assume that, I mean, he'll have more competition with Rice now that Rice is a solidified guy in the offense, but I try to tamper my expectation. I'm trying my best to not get too excited.
Yeah, I do. I don't want my excitement to suggest. I think Rice is definitely ahead of him. I think Kelsey's definitely ahead of him. We're talking about third on the target totem pole here, but we've seen Mahomes sustain 3 quality options before, so we shall see how that plays out. The only other nugget in there, too, is who is going to catch balls for the Arizona Cardinals next year. I think Trey McBride is the obvious first person to bring up. He had 81 catches last year, and I just did the math. He only had 15 catches through the first 7 weeks. So 65 of those catches came in the second half of the season, 130 catch pace on the over there. So this guy should, I mean, even now is less competition for McBride to face. I think he is maybe the number 2 guy now. Maybe the number 1. He has number 1 tight end upside, certainly within his range of outcomes. Will be that focal point of this offense from the tight end position. So that's big news for Trey McBride. Yes, they'll probably make – you got to imagine they add – if Marvin Harrison falls for them at 4, there's a no-brainer. And even if not, they'll probably draft Neighbors or somebody. So there will be some receiving talent coming in this rookie class. But even still, you got to feel good about Trey McBride now being that top dog in this offense. An offense that I do not feel good about their passing prospects are the Chargers. Good Lord. Keenan Allen going for a 4th-round pick, which was, again, come back to my Patriots, apparently too rich for the Patriots. I don't get what the hell they're doing. All this cap space that we're going to blow. This is not a Patriots podcast, though. Keenan Allen going to the Bears, 4th-round pick. To me, my knee-jerk reaction, I didn't even dive into this too much because he's coming off the best season of his career. He had a great year in terms of open percentage. He looked good. I know he's a year older and still on the field. Keenan Allen was as good as he's ever been, as productive as he's ever been, and certainly saw the biggest workload that he's ever seen. So he's coming off an amazing season, and yet he goes to the Bears where his skill set and DJ Moore seem to be very similar, other than the fact that DJ Moore is just younger, faster, and better at this stage of his career. So I just don't know. We're putting a lot of faith like Caleb Williams. All the hype is that Caleb Williams is the next big thing, and maybe he is. But if he's not, or if he has some growing pains as a rookie, to be able to sustain DJ Moore and Keenan Allen to these levels that both should be going in the first 3-ish rounds of fantasy, I don't buy that. So Keenan Allen, he is starting to drop, but he's still going at the beginning of round 4, sometimes mid-4 at the latest. I don't know. I don't love that. But also Mike Williams leaving there too, getting cut by them. Apparently he's interested, getting interest from the Panthers. Yay. The Jets. I guess if Rodgers was healthy, that would be cool, but who knows what to believe there. And then maybe the Steelers as well, which also not great. So none of the teams that you really would love to see Mike Williams land on are necessarily calling up his number. the other takeaway, of course, too, is what does this mean for Justin Herbert? Josh Palmer atop the receiver depth chart. And, of course, at pick 5, they're going to I'd be stunned if they don't go Neighbors or Rome. They got to be somehow dipping into this elite receiving class. But then there's rumblings that they're the team the Minnesota Vikings are trying to trade up with, and maybe they do just load up on running game and defense, and it's just a hideous attack. Great way to use one of the best young arms in the game in Justin Herbert. But this has to be a huge downgrade for Herbert. Definitely a downgrade for Keenan Allen, in my opinion, and a massive glaring opportunity hole for whoever's going to be that wide receiver 1. And if it's Palmer, good Lord, who knows? But yeah, I don't know what to make of this. It's hideous.
It just sucks all around, in my opinion. And we talked about it earlier on one of our first shows about what was going to happen in this wide receiver room. I didn't think both of them were going to get cut, but apparently Keenan Allen refused to restructure his contract, and I don't want to get too far into that, but I mean, I can understand it. He's coming off the best season of his career, but here we are with both of them off the team and Josh Palmer as the wide receiver 1. I know I mentioned it, grab Palmer, and I think you should still be grabbing him. His ADP is currently 171, so you can still grab him pretty late in drafts. I don't see why you wouldn't be, but yeah, it just sucks and in every way you can think about it for Justin Herbert, 0 weapons, Keenan Allen going to the Bears, playing with a rookie quarterback, and yeah, competing with a guy who's they do very similar things on the field, and he's just younger. So I agree. I just don't see any way that the Bears offense sustains two highly drafted receivers. So I'll probably just end up fading Keenan. I'm not going to make that call now, but one of them will end up being faded for me. I just don't see how they end up sustaining 2 guys there. And then Mike Williams, I used to love Mike Williams, but I think I'm done with him at this point. I saw earlier from Schefter, he's scheduled to visit with the Jets and the Steelers. I don't know why the Steelers would really bring him in. It's kind of just a replica in terms of the skill set of George Pickens. And once again, it would just be an older guy, especially one coming off of a major injury, competing with a guy with a similar skill set. So we'll see where Williams ends up, but he's not going to really move the needle for me, especially if he lands in Pittsburgh competing with Pickens. Like, maybe some people will put some steam behind him if he ends up in New York with Aaron Rodgers. I'm not really sure. We'll just have to see where he lands. But yeah, it's not great all around. Nobody really got an improved situation. It's just, we'll have to wait and see. But the Chargers will be bringing someone in for sure, and I'm sure people will get excited about that with Justin Herbert. But yeah, as of now, it's just gross.
Yeah, whoever that wide receiver 1 is, that rookie is going to be in a massive, even in a Greg Roman run-obsessed attack. That's going to be Justin Herbert, number 1, 150 targets right off the bat. Like that's going to be a great spot to be. So that's really the biggest takeaway. I do like Shane Waldron, the play caller coming over from the Seahawks, did some great things, the kind of McVay tree. So maybe Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, they do fit the dink and dunk and get the ball, let them do their thing. Like, this could be a good spot here for Caleb Williams as well, with some really impressive weapons. We'll see what he does. But again, it just, the knee-jerk reaction is not a good one. The only other receiver trade we have, and then one last guy I wanted to quickly hit, Diontae Johnson going to the Panthers, which also is going to have a big impact on George Pickens. I'll let you take the Diontae impacts. I know that's been your boy, and then maybe I'll hit a little bit of Pickens, but what's your thought? I didn't think there was too many spots that Diontae could go to that'd be a downgrade, and it's not a guaranteed downgrade. Maybe Bryce does take a step forward, but man, what we saw last year was one of the worst things I've ever had to watch football-wise. And I'm a Pats fan. Like, that was bad. The Panthers were even worse. I don't know. I am not – it seems like one of the only places Diontae could go and maybe get a downgrade, but maybe there is cause for hope. Let me know if there's a case for hope in your mind, because I don't necessarily see it myself.
I can't really make the argument. I mean, you can argue that the Kenny Pickett Steelers and the Panthers offense last year were equally bad. I mean, they were both pretty horrendous, so it's not too steep of a downgrade on going from Kenny Pickett to Bryce Young. So I guess you can take some solace in that. But yeah, it's not great. I mean, I believe in Diontae Johnson as a talent, one of the best route runners in the NFL, consistently finding himself wide open. But last year we saw some pretty big issues with his effort, which is not something I want to be saying about an NFL player who's playing a game professionally. But I mean, you just saw it out there. He didn't like it. And I mean, is the situation going to be much better? It's going to be probably another horrible team in Carolina. And if you're questioning a receiver's effort and like being able to maintain interest for the entirety of a football game, it's scary, especially with how how the Panthers are setting up to look as an offense next year. So we'll see where his price settles out, and I may still be in just because I think he's still a really talented receiver who can get open and beat just about any corner in the league. But yeah, unless Bryce Young is making a significant step forward, I just think this is going to be another nightmare offense. I mean, we saw Adam Thielen have success for about 6 weeks last year just because he was commanding a ridiculous number of the targets. And given Diontae Johnson's route running ability, I think he has the chance to command a ridiculous target share, but that's the only way he's going to do it. So target him in PPR leagues, and if the price is good, we'll see where it settles. But yeah, that's the only way he's going to be able to get there is just by taking all of the looks.
And granted, he could, if he gets that Thielen role, he's certainly a more juiced up Adam Thielen. And Scott Barrett had a great tweet about how Diontae Johnson last 4 years has been better than Justin Jefferson in terms of ESPN's open score. It's what he does well. He gets open, and for all the faults of Bryce Young, his receivers got open at the lowest rate according to so many different metrics. So this will be the type of guy he absolutely needs to get open in the short area field and make those layup throws. Like, it could be a valuable spot. I don't believe in Bryce Young nearly enough right now. They've beefed with the line, though. Maybe that will help him out. I do think the bigger implication is going to be with George Pickens as a result of this, who finished last year. Once he finally got away from Mason Rudolph, the last 2 games where Mason Rudolph started, 15 targets, 11 catches, 326 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 21.7 yards a target, and 29.6 yards per receptions was how George Pickens closed out the season when he finally was not part of the Kenny Pickett experience. We already know Russ Wilson's going to be there and ideally a upgrade. And if he's not, then Justin Fields will ideally. We saw him sustain DJ Moore for quite a bit too. And then you look at George Pickens' numbers without Diontae over those 4 games last year where Diontae missed. 28.6% target share, 3.0 yards per route run, and 16.6 fantasy points per game, the wide receiver 16. And that was while he fought through a 60.8% catchable pass rate. That was 80th in the league. So I think all things are coming up George Pickens right now between the quarterback upgrades, between the now clear number 1 role on this depth chart. He already is. See, I mean, he's going right now around pick 50 to 60. So his price tag has taken that huge swing upwards as well, and really already was pretty high too. So I still haven't got a ton of him, and yet I really like the player, and I like what I've seen him do with a better quarterback with Diontae off the field. So it all should line up. I just find myself going elsewhere in that kind of 50 to 60 range. We'll see when we draft today in just a second who's there when Pickens goes, and we can kind of debate it. But it is a huge upgrade for him regardless.
I think it's massive just because there's one less body there that he has to compete with. And like you said, he commanded targets at a very high rate when Diontae Johnson was off the field, which is really encouraging because the question that I've always had with George Pickens is he's always been that vertical threat, get up and make contested catches. So those types of guys tend to not command targets, but he was able to do it. 0.27 targets per route run when Diontae Johnson was off the field for that stretch. So he's getting looks. And with a quarterback upgrade and Diontae Johnson out of the picture, I think it's great. Russell Wilson's tendencies play pretty well into George Pickens' game. We've over the years, we've all seen those moon balls from Russell Wilson and him launching the ball up. And Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, all those guys coming down with it, Doug Baldwin back in the day. But then again, we have to go back to who the hell is going to be playing quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the season. I think Russell Wilson's skill set and tendencies play a lot better to George Pickens, but we don't know how many games we're going to get out of Russell Wilson. So I think all around, just anything related to the Steelers offense is just going to be a nightmare this offseason.
It really could be. The only other move, and I'll hit this one quickly, and I just entered the draft, and there's only a couple spots left to fill, so we will be getting that fired up in just a second. But the last move that I wanted to talk about here was Curtis Samuel landing on the Bills, and not just because it's now playing with Josh Allen, and anybody next to Josh Allen is relevant. That is the case. Yes, that's true. And yet you also got to consider that Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator here for Buffalo, Curtis Samuel had his career year under Brady in 2020, saw a ridiculous 138 total opportunities that year between 41 rushes and 97 targets. He had 77 catches on those looks ultimately put up over 1,000 total yards and 5 touchdowns and was the wide receiver 25 while playing with Teddy Bridgewater. Now, I don't think Samuel in this offense with more weapons around him is necessarily going to see that 138 opportunities. But again, he reunites with a play caller that loves to maximize his unique skill set, use him as a running back. He actually had the highest rate of first downs that year, as well as a huge chain mover for Joe Brady, an average 1.5 PPR fantasy points per opportunity, 9.2 opportunities per game, was wide receiver 3 in total touches that season. So I do think a volume spike could be in store here for Curtis Samuel, with really, besides Stephon Diggs, a very lackluster wide receiver cabinet. So I think this is a huge move for him. Do you have any last thoughts on him before I pull in the draft, which has just filled?
Yeah, I think not really. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they use both him and Khalil Shakir, both the slot guys. But I think Curtis Samuel has the edge over Shakir. Shakir's been in the system for a little longer, but I like Curtis Samuel more as a talent. So I'm more interested in betting on talent. So I think he's a good late round pick right now, and I think he can be used as the regular slot guy in Buffalo as long as he beats out Shakir.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.